From the place of empathy is where more questions and more curiosity comes. If we are not starting from empathy, we're pretty much starting from a place of judgment. So, in a place of judgment, decisions have already been made, and there's not too many questions that you're interested in asking because you apparently already know everything that you need to know about the situation or the person or how you feel about something. But if you're starting from a place of empathy, then you can get curious. That can be empathy for someone else. It can be empathy for yourself, empathy for a situation. That's where curiosity stems.
Welcome to Unpacked Culture Chronicles, where we explore how curiosity bridges differences, helping us connect across diverse perspectives and uncover deeper understanding. In this episode, Dr. Tanitra brings a unique blend of resilience coaching and operational expertise to help nonprofit leaders build strong, adaptable teams. Her experience working with global corporations like Microsoft and SAP has shaped her approach to supporting mission-driven organizations in navigating uncertainty and scaling their impact. In our conversation, we explore how individuals show up in all their complexity, whether at work, in leadership, or even within our own families. Dr. Tanitra shares insights on strengthening team resilience, adapting to change, and fostering sustainable growth. Get ready for a thoughtful and engaging discussion that I know will leave you reflecting on your own approach to leadership and teamwork. Let's dive in. So welcome to the show, Dr. Tanitra. Glad to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you again for joining. So I've been asking all of our guests to start us off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Tanitra Scorza. I am a consultant that supports social justice nonprofits in building their capacity, whether it's through resilience of their team members or process improvement or talent and development.
Thanks, Dr. Tanitra. So, this season we are talking about curiosity and particularly cultural curiosity. And I am wondering for you how curiosity has shaped the way that you work with people and your engagement.
Sure. So I just generally am a very curious person. I don't like to come into a situation with assumptions. I try to figure things out. And maybe that's my introvert tendencies. I'm like, let me check the scene before I dive deep into this. So I think it's an important part of getting to know people and just interacting with the world is to start with curiosity to see what you find out, what you can learn, what's something different or new that you didn't expect to encounter.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious from your vantage point. So you're meeting clients for the first time. Like, what does curiosity look like as you start those engagements?
If I'm starting an engagement with them, it always looks like a needs assessment. So that is a process where I'm interviewing folks, I'm reviewing materials that they think is relevant for me to review. And I'm asking questions around where they're at, where they're trying to go, why. There's a lot of why are things this way versus that way? Why were these decisions made? Why did it seem like that was the best decision to make at the time? And what informed those decisions? And I'm really collecting data as a big data collection process so that we know where to go from there and how.
Yeah. So, and I love that because I want to make the distinction for listeners right now. We are talking about cultural curiosity, but certainly before we even think about cultural curiosity, sometimes there are other pieces that we just need to be curious about in the world. And so what you're describing right now is as you enter organizations, it's more the organizational curiosity, like what actually is happening here and how might I best be of service in whatever needs to be solved. So
Exactly.
I appreciate that. Yeah. You mentioned to me as we were getting ready for the call that you can't be curious without first being empathetic. I'd love for you to expand on that.
Absolutely. So from the place of empathy is where more questions and more curiosity comes. If we are not starting from empathy, we're pretty much starting from judgment, a place of judgment. So in a place of judgment, decisions have already been made, and there's not too many questions that you're interested in asking because you apparently already know everything that you need to know about the situation or the person or how you feel about something. But if you're starting from a place of empathy, then you can get curious. That can be empathy for someone else, it can be empathy for yourself, empathy for a situation. That's where curiosity stems.
Yeah. I love that what you just shared about if we're coming from a place of judgment, a decision has already been made.
Mm-hmm.
That feels so very real for the world that we're living in right now, where we are often making snap judgments and we are very clear that we know what's best in the situation, or we at least at minimum think we know what's right. But this idea that, we can ask questions, continue to lean into curiosity for ourselves and for others, I think is really important here.
Yeah, it's I think also especially empathy for ourselves. And that can inform, well, why did I have that type of reaction or why am I feeling this way? Instead of, I shouldn't have this reaction. I shouldn't feel this way. It's more of a why, where is this coming from?
Yeah. So like the other thing I hear in that is like we have a tendency as people to shame and blame, right? Like we're living in the day and age of cancel culture. And I think to some extent, like that extends to us as well. It's like to
Mm-hmm.
your point around like shame, it's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that or I shouldn't have had this reaction, as opposed to just embracing it and being like, this was the thing that happened for me. Let me explore a little bit more about why that surfaced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like there's so much power in that because it's giving ourselves grace in the moment, understanding that we're learning and growing every day.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. And even when, going back to cancel culture, when there's that snap judgment that, because of what was said or done, there's no room for exploration or forgiveness or curiosity. It's just the judgment is made and that's it. So I think there's opportunity there to have some empathy, to bring some more empathy into the room. And of course there's going to be that, well, what if, they did this awful, terrible thing on purpose? Okay. There's always going to be there's a whole spectrum here, but I think having some discernment around where can there be an opportunity to explore, I think is worth exploring.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like when we put the judgment out front, the answers are finite, right? We already
Mm-hmm.
know what is to be or why someone did something, why we got a result that we did. But when we are leading with more empathy and curiosity, there's space for new ideas, new solutions. Like again, I feel like it's infinite in that way that we can continue to come up with things because we're constantly asking that question, what else could be true, right? How else
Mm-hmm.
might we do this?
Mm-hmm.
So keeping on this thread of curiosity and empathy, how do you use that to navigate cultural dynamics on teams and team challenges?
For sure. So we all have our stuff, good, bad, ugly, and indifferent, whatever. When we're working with others and working on a team, we bring all of that with us. And sometimes those things interact with our team members instead of us interacting with our team members. So, what I mean by that is if we have, maybe there's something we have a closed mind about, or maybe there's, we have a chip on our shoulder about a certain situation, but that's not who we are. We just have a chip on our shoulder about a certain situation. Who we are is who we were born to be. But instead of coming into those conversations and into those interactions as ourselves, we're coming in as this person with a chip on our shoulder. So it's important in relationships and team dynamics to be aware of that. Like, oh, yes, this thing does trigger me. This thing bothers me a lot. And I can recognize that and still have a conversation and connect with this person as a human being instead of letting that thing that bothers me be, what's driving the interaction.
Hmm. So it sounds like also that you're drawing from the power of maybe separating out behavior from the individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we can all behave in a host of different ways depending on what's going on in the environment with ourselves, et cetera. But I'm hearing pretty clearly, like, you want people to be able to look at the person, the work that needs to be done, separate from maybe a particular, in this case, a chip on their shoulder or behavior that they're exhibiting.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we think about organizations, they are made up of lots of different people with pretty diverse identities. And I'm curious how you see individual identities further shaping the organization's overall culture.
I see it as puzzle pieces, right? And how they come together. The individual pieces are uniquely shaped, and those shapes can come together to form a beautiful picture. And that's how I see organizations coming together and teams coming together. The what the puzzle turns out to be is different for each organization, each team, and those pieces coming together, that's what makes it, the organization, its own beautiful formation. So I think it's important for there to be a welcoming of the different shapes. Like, you are shaped the way that you're shaped for a reason. And it's not my place to try and change that shape, right? It's my place to see how you can best fit in to this picture that we're forming together.
Yeah. I love that analogy because the other thing that rings true as I'm visualizing this is, if we get to a point where we decide, you know what, I'm going to cut this puzzle piece at a different angle because I don't like what it has to contribute, then when we go to put the picture together, right, our puzzle together, it's incomplete, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have literally told someone, don't show up as you are in this moment. And by sort of dialing back a little bit of them, right, their personality, their skills, their talents, whatever it happens to be, their lived experiences, we no longer have access to the very thing that makes this puzzle complete, and the picture beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And along those lines, as I'm thinking about like what it means to like really show up authentically as ourselves, there has been so much conversation over the last couple of years about people bringing their whole self into the workplace. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, just based on the work that you do, like, what does it mean for you to show up as your whole self? Whether it's you personally or like in clients, what does that mean in today's workplace?
Yeah, I think there used to be this assumption, or this, something that was imposed on the workforce, that, you come to work as a worker bee and you work, and then nothing else outside of your life should impact how that looks. And it possibly worked for some people, but it didn't work, and it doesn't work for a lot of people. And we saw that in the pandemic, um, looking at people who have different physical needs, or different ability needs, started to realize, wait a minute, we could have been accommodated better, um, all this time, or at least, a certain amount of time when certain technologies became available. But it was, no, you need to show up to work with your worker bee outfit on and do your worker bee thing. And, when it's time to go, buzz off. But that's, and I think especially the younger generation that's coming up now in the workforce is not too keen on that approach to not being able to show up as your whole self. And I think that's different for everyone. And I think that's the point. Is the work getting done and the way it needs to get done in a timely fashion? Then great. That should be what matters. But sometimes there's I don't know, like a need to control, or I don't know what that is, but it doesn't work for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So, like, as I hear you say that, it brings up a few questions to me, and I'm going to come back to this idea of Gen Z in just a second because I think that's something that a lot of people are wondering about right now. But you spoke about the pandemic, and maybe the accommodations that were needed. And we started to realize during that period, like, hey, we could have been doing this differently all along. So whether it be remote work, or, I mean, there were a host of things that sort of shifted our ability to lean in on Zoom or other platforms, similar. I am curious though, as you think about sort of where we came from in the pandemic to the period that we're in today. And again, there's a
Mhm.
lot of shifting, a lot of pivoting that's going on. From your perspective, like, why is it important maybe for organizations to clarify where they stand on key issues? So again, whether it's accommodations or so forth.
I think it's important because it's great if you can work at a place that aligns with your personal values. And not everyone has that privilege, but it's great if you can. And I think it's important for you to know what you're getting into. If you are agreeing to work somewhere, it's important to know, this person supportive of who I am, or am I going to have to hide that a little bit, or tone it down, or dial it back, or compromise that? It's important, on an individual level, to just feel like you're living in your truth, but then also for the organization, if you are attracting the type of people that align with the mission of the organization, then you're going to have better outcomes. You're going to have better return on investment. You're going to move further, faster, longer than if you're trying to squeeze people into this mold that they don't fit into.
And so, like, to that point, what do you think happens when organizations like either avoid taking a position or take one that conflicts with employees' core values?
If they avoid taking a position, it leads people to fill in the gaps, and they may start to read between the lines, and they may see, oh, whether you say it or not, I know what position you're taking because I see it in the way that you're treating us, whether that's good or not good. If the organization takes a position that conflicts with the employees' core values, decisions will be made. I think people can either decide that they'll continue working there, they'll continue to collect a check, they may disengage. In other ways, they may decide that there is not worth their time and energy and effort to put their best foot forward. Um, any number of decisions could be made, or they can decide to leave. So it's definitely easier to put your best foot forward when you feel like you're working in a way that's aligned with your core values. And it's easier to be creative, and it's easier to tap into that.
Yeah. I think that the reality for me is, as I'm working with clients and just having conversations in life right now, I think it's going to be a tough season for people across sectors right now because so many companies are doing things on, and it doesn't matter again what your belief system is or what your core values are, but it feels like at this point we are so polarized as a nation that we're constantly bumping into someone's values, right? And
Mm.
I'm beginning to wonder, to the point you made earlier around Gen Z sort of showing up different in the workplace, like what the implications of these workplace dynamics are for the younger generation. So Gen Z, Gen Alpha is right up, on its heels, and they'll be here soon. What are you seeing when it comes to younger generations at work?
It's interesting because there's always, I don't know if you remember your first job, and how you showed up at your first job is probably quite different from how you show up as a professional today.
And we are grateful for that.
So there's definitely that. There's definitely like, okay, this is your first job. All right. There's some, yes, you will learn some things as you move forward in the professional world. There's that. And there is just okay, this is not my first time. This is not my first job. This is not my first professional engagement. This is how we are, and this is how we show up. And I find it, I find it admirable because I feel like some members of the Gen Z generation, they're able to communicate and articulate their needs in a way that either I have had a hard time doing personally, or maybe even generationally. It's just like, well, no, you can't. nobody will care if you articulate your feelings or your needs in that way. So suck it up, buttercup. So I think there's something admirable about just the way they can show up in the workforce in a way that, is not just a making silly decisions as a first job type of thing. It's like, no, this is how we think it should be, and this is how we want it to go.
Yeah, it seems like some of these younger generations, and I will even give credit to like the millennials here. I say this as a Gen Xer, that they between the millennials and certainly the Gen Zs, like they're coming in with very clear viewpoints about what they want to see in these spaces. Like, so if we're talking about work, but also just the world, right? Their politics, they have very clear positions. But what does feel very different for me, maybe than even as a Gen Xer when I was raised and when I started my first job, is they have access to information we never had, right?
Yeah.
The internet, social media, things are available 24/7. And I think that they are able to take in such a wide range of information. It shapes how they're showing up, right? And this
Mm.
idea of influencing, while it might have been originally just designed to think about like sort of online and social media influences, so forth, it is influencing how they work. Because when one of them gets on the mic and they're saying like, hey, no, we're going to say no to this, or we want this other piece of, whether it's remote work, or we want different benefits or different people to be considered spousal partners for the sake of benefits, like they're loud. They are very loud, but they're not ill-informed in these things either. And the other thing that's like coming up for me that I'm kind of wondering about is mentorship in this moment. So you asked a little a little while ago what my first experience was, as I'm in the workforce. And I'm realizing, I was young and I was immature, like most, new employees are, 20 something. But what I distinctly remember is having, they weren't all out conflicts, but I remember feeling conflicted by some of the guidance that I was given by so-called mentors, because
Mm.
it was more that you have to be like me. You have to
Mm.
show up, you have to speak a certain way, you have to present yourself a certain way, down to the clothing that you wore. And I remember feeling really conflicted even at that stage, because I'm like, I want to be able to be me. Right? I feel
Mhm.
like there's more power in my voice and my efforts when I'm able to simply do things my way. And I can also hold true that my way was not always going to be the right way. So like I also understand that energy that comes with youth where you're like, I know everything and you old person know nothing, right? So I'm balancing this, but I do think that still as the we're getting to be some of the older people, if you will, right, in the workforce. And so like as we're looking back to the Gen Zs, the Gen Alphas as they emerge, what does mentorship mean when you're trying to create space for them to both be who they are, but also to understand how the systems, how organizational culture works?
Yeah, I think about that's a great question. And I think about is how I approach this idea of mentorship and guidance is again with curiosity, asking questions around why a certain decision was made or what's the desired outcome to try and, either be a sounding board or provide more ideas around how to achieve a desired outcome. And also just my style of leadership or interaction, even when I was a teacher, even with my son who's 16, it's like you could try it that way and you may not like the consequences. So if you're here, if you're ready to receive guidance, I have guidance to give. But I'm not gonna force it. I'm not gonna shove it down your throat. Some people they need to find out.
Yeah.
FAFO. It's like some people that's just the way that they learn. And they don't learn from advice or they don't learn from input. They learn from finding out from their experiences and the voice that they tell themselves, the words that they tell themselves, oh, if I do that, it's going to be that consequence. And I didn't like that last time. So I'm going to do something differently.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. Like I was kind of laughing as you said that because I am very much of the school of thought. I don't need to touch the pot to know it's hot. Like watching you
Mm.
burn your hand is more than sufficient for me. And
Mm-hmm,
I think
mm-hmm,
there are lessons that can be learned from that. But even as I heard you pose this question or thought to them, but like there are going to be consequences to any decision that we make. I partially want to ask them like, what do you imagine the results of this decision to be?
mm,
Right, because here's and this is what I mean, like where it gets a little tricky for me with mentorship is like I know of a certain set of results that are going to happen because I may have lived this or walked this path before, right? Or I've seen,
mm-hmm,
again, I don't need to touch the pot, so I've seen other people burn themselves on this.
mm-hmm,
And I think the reason Gen Z is able to make some of the headway that they're making is because they have different ways of thinking about it where we're just not even going to have any exposure to it because that's not our life. We're in a different generation. And so
mm-hmm,
I think it could be an opportunity. I love the question, but like I think it's an opportunity for both of us to learn, right? For them to test out what they think might be true, for us maybe to understand, right, as more seasoned people, what could be true. And then I guess we're all going to find out together
mm-hmm.
because the world keeps changing so fast. Honestly, like tried and true best practices may not be that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That they need to also they need to transition and to shift. So we talked about how people show up in all their differences at work. How do you see that with your own kids?
Yeah, I got three of them. I got the FAFOer for life. That's the one in the middle. It's like, you may not want to do that. She's like, I'm going to F around and find out. Okay. The oldest one he takes advice, he listens, but he's also like, he wants to like run his own data. He wants to do his own analysis. So he may or may not listen. The little one though, she'll take some sound advice. She'll take some sound advice. And that's a great person to work with, a great person to talk to, because they're going to listen to your advice and they're going to heed it. Now, does that mean she's a compliant person? No. But if you say, I really like when you're nice and you don't yell at mommy, then the next day she'll be nicer and she'll say please and thank you more. It's like a noticeable shift in behavior once
Yeah.
that
So
is given.
I love that you have that full range of perspectives, even in your own household, because I think sometimes we forget, we go into organizations and we're like, well, this person they have this particular personality and like they don't listen to anything. And I'm like, even under your own roof, our kids are like the master class, if you will, because they do show up in so many different ways. Our kids are not identical. They have different personality traits and so many ways. When I think about like my daughter, like I learned so much from her in general, that it's a constant reminder when I am working with other people, like there are going to be shifts. And I have to be able to adjust just as much as I'm asking them to adjust for me. Like I need to be able to make those adaptations as well. And I think that's important because so many folks still approach this from the vantage point that because I said it, that's the way it goes. And I'm like, man, again, as a parent, even when you say things, it doesn't go exactly the way that you would hope in all cases. And so why would that look any different as you're dealing with a broader set of people in a workplace environment, especially when, they don't have loyalty to you at all in that way, right? They're a worker and they may love the company, they may want their job, but like they still are individuals who they desire respect and should quite frankly be given respect for who they are as individuals. So I guess that, that does bring me to another question. How does your work take on new meaning in periods of rapid transition and change, right? There's so much happening in our world and it feels like pivot points are everywhere every day. And so what does that mean for you?
Yeah, it means resilience. Gee golly. Like every day, it's like tapping into a new reservoir of resilience because, oh my gosh. So, it's this period has been, and then, I think back to COVID, like it's been a real wacky decade. But, you know, there are points where we have to tap into our resilience. And because it's not a steady incline of, everything is going great, we're feeling great, things are going great. There's dips, and how far low those dips go, how long we stay in those dips, what those dips cause us to do. It all comes down to the ability to pick up the weight that's been placed on the ground. Like how much, how heavy of a load can we lift before it's too much. So I definitely tap into my mental fitness practices for that, because yeah, it's a roller coaster. It's an ocean. We are surfing waves, and it's either going to take us out or we're going to become great surfers.
Yeah. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about mental fitness, because I don't know that that's something that people are as aware of. So, what does that mean for you?
Sure. What mental fitness is, just as a definition, is our ability to respond to and deal with stressors. We all have stressors. Some of them are external, many of them are internal, and how we're able to respond to those stressors determines our level of mental fitness. And it's different in every area of our life. So we may have great mental fitness at work and lose it when we go to our family's house, or vice versa. So, it's in each area, there's a different level of strength. And the brain is a muscle, just like we have, muscles everywhere else. And it can be exercised just like any other muscle. And so mental fitness is about continually working on that fitness level of our brain, our ability to be resilient. We don't go to the gym, lift 20 pounds once, and say, woo, we got it. I never have to come back to the gym again. It doesn't work that way. So, if you don't use the muscles, they don't work as well. If you regularly challenge them, they'll get stronger. So, that's mental fitness in a
And
nutshell.
I can see a tie in to mental fitness and curiosity also, because I think when we are exhausted, it's easier to use sort of those snap judgments again, right? Like, this is what I already believe and think, or someone has told me, therefore, instead of spending the energy to process this myself, go seek out new information, I'm just going to use that to backfill the story. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I could see again, like mental fitness as a resilience practice. Like, how do I make sure I can stay sharp and focused and attentive to what needs to be addressed in front of me? But I am wondering, for folks who, again, may be newer to this practice, like, what are the practical steps that people can utilize or tap into to promote more mental fitness in their organization?
Sure. So a simple thing to do, and it really starts with the individual. Teams are made up of individuals. So if the individuals are stronger, the team can be stronger. So it's really about tapping into your body, tapping into your senses. You could be in a conversation and really tuning into the words the person is saying, or you could be talking to them across the table and really tuning into the colors that you're seeing and the shapes that you're seeing and the texture that you're seeing and their skin and their eyes and their irises. You could be sitting by yourself and rubbing your fingertips together or wiggling your toes and feeling your toes in your shoes. These things bring us to now, whereas stressors are shooting us into the future, they're dragging us into the past, and they're not letting us be present to what is really going on in the moment and tuning into that so that we can tap into our empathy and tap into asking questions and tapping into making decisions that are sound and based on the information that we were able to gather because we were curious and asking questions and gathering data. And then moving forward in action where we feel grounded and we don't feel like we're stressing about what's going to happen or stressing about what did happen, but we're grounded in right now. Right now, my feet are planted on the ground. Right now, I am breathing. Right now, I am hearing or seeing or tasting. And right now, these are the decisions I can make to move the situation forward.
Mm. That feels really powerful right now, because I think we are certainly in that period of time where it's really difficult to slow down when every indicator around us is telling us, rush, you got to get this done, right? Rush
Mm-hmm.
forward, move this forward. And this is a really great reminder about the power of grounding oneself so that we can remain present. Like I fundamentally believe that we make better decisions when we have space to simply be. Right?
Mm.
You've carved out that time. I can now think a little bit more strategically. I can be intentional. I can figure out if a move is the right one for me, or perhaps we should just leave it, alone. But when we are feeling that pressure to constantly move, it seems like we lose the ability to be able to really tap into that presence that you talked about. So
Yes.
that,
And there's wisdom there. There's wisdom. There's
mm-hmm.
wisdom that's just inside of us that we can tap into if we just allow it
Yeah.
to come forward.
And I guess I'm going to ask you another question on the tail end of that, because one of the things, like, I tend to be a very reflective person. So, like, I might be thinking a little bit when I'm out on a walk, or just having some quiet time in the morning when I have my cup of coffee. But a lot of people don't even feel like they can carve out time to be present. What do you tell
Mm.
them?
You don't have to carve out time to be present. You are present. You're present. It's a matter of being intentional about tuning in. So when I say get into your body, I'm not talking about going on a meditative 20-minute walk in the middle of your day. Wouldn't that be lovely? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about I have 50 meetings. I can connect to the sound of my voice or the sound of their voice or the feeling of my fingertips or the wiggle of my toes throughout those 50 meetings. I don't have to carve out time. And I think, that becomes a barrier to entry. And it doesn't have to be a barrier to entry.
I love that reframing of it, because you're absolutely right. We are present within ourselves all the time, but are we acknowledging the presence that is with us? Dr. Tanitra, this has been wonderful to be able to talk to you today. And I'm wondering if you have any new things that are coming up in your business that you're focusing on that you want to share with the listeners today.
Not necessarily new, but I am definitely interested in supporting organizations that feel like they're reeling from all of this, all of the change that's happening. They feel like they're having to pivot in ways and they that they never anticipated, and they just, it is overwhelming. I'm really interested in supporting those organizations and their teams to help them get grounded, get strategic, get focused, and get intentional about what needs to happen to keep moving the work forward.
Yeah, there never has been a better time, I think, for the work that you do right now, because we do need to cultivate that resilience. We need to figure out how we can be intentional and strategic in our movements forward, as a team, right? Not just as individuals, but as a team.
Mhm.
So where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about your work?
Absolutely. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Tanitra Scorza. Definitely look me up. Send me a message. I'm happy to chat.
Okay, and we will put that in the show notes for you as well. Dr. Tanitra, thank you so much for coming on. Definitely appreciate this. I'm going to go off and see what other mental fitness activities I can uncover for myself, because I definitely can use a few more in my repertoire. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tanitra. Your perspective on resilience and adaptation, both in leadership and life, really offers us a lot to think about. If you're interested in learning more about her work, be sure to check out Equitable Breakthrough Solutions. I hope today's discussion sparked new reflections for you. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated for you? And what new questions are you sitting with? Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, be well.